All right. Welcome, my YouTube followers, subscribers. Halfling Wizard here with another DM Bits. I have a special guest, Jade Luna, over here. She is a DM and a player, and we are going to discuss today the rules. More specifically, should we follow the rules to the letter, or should we adjust them as needed? Right out of the gate, I'll say I believe that we should take the rules as a foundation, but not use them as like a Bible, basically, where they're the word and there is no getting around it. And the reason I think that is because I think once you put rules like this, and there are a lot of people out there, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with it, really. I mean, I think there's something wrong with it, but hey, whatever. You have those people out there, they call them gatekeepers, who basically anytime you do something wrong, they go, according to the rule book. And I think that mentality basically makes a game boring. Because with that type of tight reins on the rules, I think that it doesn't allow players' characters to venture outside of the parameters that the game has set for them. It doesn't allow them to evolve and grow, other than the leveling up, which we know is, you get new spells and you get new actions or whatever, but I think sometimes as your character evolves, their levels evolve, their class evolves, they evolve. And I sometimes think that the rules, or people who are so narrow-sighted on the rules, I think it sometimes stifles a player or a character's creativity. So that's where I stand on that. I don't know where you stand on that.
I absolutely agree. And I think that the DM, I don't know that people who don't DM, and the reason I don't do it very often is because it is so much work. It really is. To do it well, you spend twice as much time away or before the game than you do during the session, just preparing everything. And I think the DM has the final say and should have the final say. Nobody wants to get into a game and start having an argument between a player and a DM about, well, this says I can do this, or you cannot do this, or especially when they correct another player. I'm going to do this, and the DM's like, okay, and then there's always one person that pops up and says, no,
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where what we now call them house rules. And I think house rules are important to establish hierarchy when you start when you start a campaign and a new group of people. Like, okay, here's the deal. If I'm wrong, absolutely correct me. Maybe not right during the session, because you can't possibly know everything. But just try not to disrupt the game. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that, and I agree with you. I think that the rules obviously have a place, and they're there for a reason. And as we were talking about earlier before we started actually filming, is we were looking for the passage in the Dungeon Master's guide about the role of the rules and the role of the DM. And now the DM is a referee, and it's their job to decide when to follow the rules and when to change them. And if you aren't familiar with that passage, it is in the Dungeon Master's Guide, on page 4 under the Dungeon Master. And it actually says, the DM as a referee, the DM interprets the rules and decides when to abide by them and when to change them. Now, as a DM myself, I started out as a player, and I've really kind of become a permanent DM, as they call them, or whatever. I'm not sure what the term is, but which is fine. And in my campaign, the one I'm running currently, I bend the rules all the time. all the time, because when your characters or your players are in combat, especially during combat, I really, you want characters to have a good time with what they're doing. And I always have players go, "Oh, I just want to do it. Is that okay if I do that?" I'm like, "Absolutely, go for it. Absolutely." I'm never gonna say no unless it's just a blatant. They're just trying to get away with something, you know. So, and then it's just more of a kidding around with everybody. But if a character wants to do something and the rule book says that they can't do it, or it doesn't necessarily say they can't do it, but it doesn't really say they can either, then I'm just going to be like, do it. If it's in your character's motivation, then do it. I'm not gonna sit there and say no to you, because I think that's where I think the rule book gets in the way. Now, I think that, when it comes to rules, all games, and, D&D is a game, all games have to have rules. I mean, you have to. It's just how to play the game.
Yeah.
And I think that the basic rules, for the most part, are pretty basic. I mean, sometimes they're a little vague, which is great because they're open to interpretation. But I think where most people, and I'm going to say gatekeepers, or what I like to call rule Nazis, some people call rule lawyers, I think where they get into this whole by the letter mentality is when, like, you're in combat. I've noticed that a lot of it comes out in combat. Yeah. And it's like, oh, wait, no, your wizard can't do that. Like, well, as the DM, I'd be like, yeah, his wizard can do that. If I so want it to happen. And that's the big thing, I think, when it comes to the rules. I mean, if you're one of those people that just, the rules are the rules, and that's cool. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I mean, I think, it's sort of like when gatekeeping, it's sort of like mansplaining to someone. It's where they go, where if it's my character and I'm like, oh, my character's going to do this really acrobatic thing. And then the rule lawyer comes in, or the gatekeeper comes in and basically says, oh, no, you can't do that. This is how that character does, or how that character works. And it's like, well, I've been playing this character for 30 years. I kind of know what he can do. Right. So that's when I think it kind of comes in. And then it becomes a little insulting, actually. So yeah, I agree with you from what you said earlier about if you have a problem, or you're like, oh, wait, that's not right in the rules, then you need to wait for a break, or when you're out of combat. Yes. Because you don't want to disrupt the flow. Correct. And it does. It completely brings everything to a complete halt as you sit there and debate the rule book. So I think it's, rules. I mean, I'm a big fan of rules because they create structure. I believe that. But I think when you're in this type of game, because this type of game is ever evolving. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the rules have to evolve. And I know they do. And they have over the many, many, many years that the game's been around. But I think even now with the, and the other thing is with all of the professional D&D groups that are in the world right now, like the Critical Roles and all those folks who are awesome to watch. Yeah. I think that people see those groups and they think, well, this is how they do it, so that's how we have to do it. And I think sometimes that's a little of a disservice, because, and to watch them, they do it. You have like rule Nazis in those groups, and they're big on, these are the rules, we're going to follow them. And I think that's a little bit of a disservice. I mean, I like watching them; they're fun to watch, and they're very informative. But I think the rules tend to get in the way sometimes.
Yeah, it goes back to one of our earlier, when we had a roundtable about evil versus intent. The rules say that this character is inherently evil. A drow has to be evil. But why?
Yeah.
Why? You know, it's
Mhm.
if it's fun to play a character that goes against that type and there's a good reason for it, or why not let that's what makes it fun and evolving, is that it is growing.
Yeah. Yeah, because in my temporal campaign, the Gods of Orlea, you guys are on your way to the territory called Valmead, and it's where all the dark species of the world reside. Not because they've been banished there or anything like that. That's just where they hang out. They've got their own cities, they've got their own towns, they've got their own everything. So you guys are actually going to encounter some what we would consider evil characters in a way that you probably wouldn't expect to see them. I don't want to give too much away, but you're going to encounter some juxtaposition in this
Right.
area. Because I truly believe, I don't think that, I was, because of that idea that the rules state that, and I hate when someone says that, but the rules state, like, I don't care what the rules state. One of the very first things I like to say whenever I start a campaign is I'm like, hey, this is my world, my rules. And I will follow the basic rules, but I'm gonna break a lot of them because I think sometimes they get in the way. I truly do. I think sometimes, and I think the intent of the original creators, I think they kind of wanted that. I think they do, because I remember way back in the day when the very first D&D started. It was about the storytelling. It was about the fun of the story, and you can't create a story that's interesting and fun and exciting and have it drowned in these rules.
Yes.
Because if you followed the rules to the letter, I mean, it'd be very much like, okay, our party went from A to B, we fought a monster. B to C, we fought a monster. It's that, and it's like, well, that's boring.
What was the original purpose of the DM screen? Just how accurate are those rolls? If your whole party's about to get killed, oh, they missed you.
Yeah. Oh, well, look at that. It's like, oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that screen started for a reason. Besides,
Oh, yeah.
references written on the back.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, it looks all legit. Like, look, I've got all the rules back here, and all this, and it really is. It's just to hide so they don't see you fudge the rolls. Because, and it's.
I have done it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I did it. I actually did it recently in the most recent session in Gods of Orlea, because otherwise you guys would have gotten your butts beat.
Yeah, I mean, it's not fun to have just to accidentally roll 3 1s in a row and you're dead.
Exactly. Oops.
Not fun at all.
No, not at all. I mean, with this last session where you guys fought the purple worms, that was I fudged that a little bit because it was there was a point where they were kicking some butt and people were getting pretty bad, and I was like, okay, let me pull back a little bit, and that's okay. I think that sometimes you need to, because nobody wants to run a session and then boom, 3 of your characters die right out of the cage. I mean, it's like, then all of a sudden they're rolling saving throws to the rest of the match, and it's like, well, that's not fun.
Nobody wants to see Lord of the Rings where Smaug wins.
Yeah, exactly.
That would kind of be cool, actually.
I think so too. Yeah.
But there's the storytelling is not advanced to have total party killed.
Right. And even on like skill rolls and things like that, I mean, there have been times where you guys have rolled really low and have missed the mark. And I'm like, well, with that, hey, you only had to roll a 10. It's like, so I mean, yeah, you fudge it. You don't stick to the rules all the time, because if that was the case, one, you guys would never get anywhere. 2, the story elements that need to be said would not get said.
Right.
So yeah, I understand. Rules, they just.
Yeah, you have the perfect segue in your game because the gods are controlling the characters.
Yeah.
So you always have divine intervention to summon away the
Yeah.
or
And I've done that before. I've done way back early on when we first started. There were times where you guys got into some pretty big fights, and either we're at 0 or you're on your death saves. And the divine intervened. They're like, oh, suddenly you find that you have this many health all of a sudden. It's like your deity has blessed you with
you hear a voice in your mind saying, "Live to fight another day."
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you're right. I mean, when I built this particular world and campaign, I had in mind that the deities themselves cannot interfere directly, but they can basically send you things like and kind of interfere indirectly.
Right.
So like they can't help you win a battle, but they could give you some health, to help you win the battle, that sort of thing. So, and that's a complete, that's like breaking the rules. And because sometimes I don't think. Now I will say, and for people listening, do not think that my sessions are all like rainbows and kittens, because I legitimately try to kill my players. It's like I legitimately put them against creatures that I know could kill them, and but with that, I do not forbid the gods to intervene. So, and the main reason is because I want them to keep playing, keep fighting these bad guys until they win. So I'm gonna reanimate them or whatever I got to do to make that happen. But I do.
The sense of risk is real. There is very much a sense of that in your face.
Right, which is what I want. I want the idea of, oh God, he's trying to kill us. Like, yes, I am.
At one point, there was like, okay, there's 2 of us left standing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we gotta. How can we heal somebody or?
Well, I think there was a time when you were the only one standing at one point. What battle was that? There was a fight where I think you were the only one, like, with health point, like with actual HP. Yeah. Everyone was at like 0. They were all stable, but they were all down. And that happens. I mean, and so yeah, I mean the rules are there, but I don't necessarily think they need to be like set in stone. Because I just think it just interrupts. I think it disrupts character evolution. Now, I'm not saying that you, as a wizard, that I'm going to ignore the rules of a wizard, because I don't do that.
Right.
Like how many spell slots I have, and those sort of rules are in place specifically for that character because of the nature of the character. So I don't mess with those. As a player, I would not mess with those. As a DM, I don't mess with those because but if a character would like to do something that is out of nature for their character, then I'm all for it. Try it, see what happens. Like with my character in the other 5e campaign, I mean, I'm constantly asking the barbarian to toss me places. I mean, because I'm a halfling, so I'm only like 3.5 feet tall. And so I'm like, here. And I think he's a human barbarian, isn't he? Isn't that Orlus? Orlus is the character's name. And so I'm constantly like, do you think you can throw me across that? Like, and honestly, I don't think, my character, in a traditional sense, the character probably wouldn't do that. But I'm very much like, I'll try to run up that wall. Sure, why not? Was that an athletics check? Let me do that. So, yeah, I think as a DM, you kind of have to let your players play.
Yes, absolutely.
And, both of us, we come from acting backgrounds. So, and we know that in that sort of sense, going back to the calling rules out in the middle of gameplay, as actors, when you're acting and then suddenly someone sort of stops and does and says something, asks random questions to the director or whatever right in the middle of a scene, as an actor opposite of that, it's frustrating.
Yes.
And it's the same in D&D. We're fully committed. I'm like, our characters are going. We're like throwing fireballs and shooting our bows and all that. And then suddenly someone's like, wait, you can't do it like that. And immediately it pulls you out. And It's like, well, so much for that. So now it's like, okay, let's try to get back into it. So if you are one of those rule folks, make note of it and talk about it either at a break or at the end of the session. Just let it go.
And there have been times where I've been wrong. I didn't want to stop and spend 20 minutes trying to look up a specific rule. So I kind of, you have to kind of fly by the seat of your pants a little bit. And I have had a player come to me after the game and say, hey, remember? And it's like, well, you know what? You are absolutely right.
Exactly.
And usually I'll reward them a little bit. It's like, thank you for pointing it out. It's like,
right.
I was absolutely wrong. But thank you also for not interrupting the game to debate that.
Exactly. And I'm that way too. It's like if I have a question, I'll wait. If we're in combat, it's absolutely, I will not say anything. If we're in character work, like we're walking from one town to another, then I'll ask questions, player questions. But anytime we're in like full on role play, then I keep all those questions to the side and I'll ask them afterwards when we're either like in a long rest or, we're at a downtime point. But because I just think that, and I personally think, and this is probably going to sound really crude, but I think people who call that stuff out like that are just doing it to be butts. I do. I think sometimes they do it just to say, look what I know. Or I've read I've memorized the DM and the DMG and the player's handbook. I know all the rules by heart. And it's like, well, okay, well, yay for you. But, I've played with people like that. I've played with people who my phrase for them are rule Nazis. Because the only reason that is because every one of the ones that I've ever encountered have truly been so angry about rule breaking that it just comes out as this sort of attack.
Yes.
And now I know some people who do that do not mean it as that, but I can't do it. It's like, please stop interrupting the game. It's like you're making it not fun anymore.
Yeah. I think those people maybe don't have as firm they're maybe excuse me. Maybe they're not as comfortable with the role playing side of it.
Yeah.
They understand, the rules. They understand this is how this works and this is what I can do and I can build a character to do this. But maybe, they that's their strength is, they rely on what they're comfortable with.
Which is funny because D&D is a TTRPG game. It's like it's right there at the beginning of it. It's a role play game, which I think is quite humorous. And
game than role play.
Yeah, and they're more into. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that a lot of the people that are kind of the rule Nazis are more the combatants. They're the ones that like to do all the fighting. They know all the rules behind their character's fighting style. They know the fighting styles of all the other classes. I mean, they know all of them.
Yes.
And I think that, and even in that, I get that the mechanics of a character in combat are important. They are. The type of character you play, the class of that character, what that class is capable of, yes. The understanding what that class is capable of. I get that. I do. But there's no need to be a butt about it. I mean, it's like truly you can be a rule Nazi that's not quite so Nazi. I mean, like, you know, because I'm not perfect. We're none of us perfect. So I might do something that is completely out of class for my character. And it's not because I'm doing it to be intentionally doing it, but I may have just said, oh, this is really cool. Maybe I misread something.
It's like, oh, I have a great idea. This is what I can do. And then, no, you can't.
You can't do that. Like,
but okay.
Why can't I do it? And of course, immediately it creates debate. It's like, why can't I do it? Well, because in the player's handbook it says this, and I'm thinking, I don't care what the player's handbook says. I'm like, it's my character, you know. And then of course that's up to the DM to have the final say so in it. I mean, so the DM needs to be able to interpret all that and go, okay, I'll let you do it.
And we all need to accept that the DM's word is the final word.
Yeah, so absolutely.
We're not starting a debate here. You made your point. I've made my decision. Can we move on? And we can talk about it later if it's really bothering you. But for right now,
I mean, exactly. I mean, but 9 times out of 10, I don't think these rules. I don't think the rule breaking is so like under their skin that they're gonna, like, you know, blow their tops.
Yeah.
I really think it's just sort of I know the rules and you obviously don't. So, and I'm like, well, okay, I don't know the rules 100%. You're right, I don't. And, you know, and I've read the book. I've read through the rules. You know, I think they're pretty cut and dry. I think they're pretty simplistic. So I don't know. Have I committed them to memory? No. Will I ever? No. But I know that I'm not going to tell a player no because a rule book said so. Because that to me is, like, I think a cardinal sin for role playing is for the DM to be, no, you can't do that. And then they go, why? And then you say, because the player's handbook on page so-and-so says, no, you can't do that. And I think that immediately as a player, when you tell me, no, you can't do that, it immediately disheartens me. I mean, I immediately am like, well, okay, well, now what do I do? I mean, that's, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that this is why I think rules can get in the way sometimes. I think, yes, rules are important, but I think that being such a stickler to the word of the law is detrimental. I think it could destroy a player's enthusiasm.
Yes.
You know, it's like in theater, if you feel like, oh my gosh, I have this great character idea, and immediately the director's like, no. Without even discussion, you know. I mean, I've worked with directors like that, but, you know, usually though they give the actor a chance to explain their choices, but if you just immediately say no, then it kind of just destroys that player a little bit,
right?
And then they won't. I don't think they will achieve the evolution of their character. Because
they'll be afraid to play and take risks.
Yeah, because they're afraid that they're going to break a rule. And so I think it's important as the DM to say, you know, there are rules to the game, but we may not follow those rules.
Yes.
That's why I always say it's my world, my rules. So what I say goes.
Yep.
And again, I'm never going to tell a character, no, they can't try something. Again, unless it's just,
let's see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Now, in my campaign, I do have some players that like to try to get away with stuff, but I'll give you a little bit here and there, but I'm not gonna give it all to you. So
I mean, if it's way, if it's like a major strength thing, and your character's obviously,
right.
they may have to roll just a little bit higher than the character whose strength is their main. But of course, let them try.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Oh, I'm all for it. They're like, ooh, I'm horrible at this, but can I try it anyway? I'm like, sure, go for it. I've done that before, and there's like I think Soren is not good with athletics. I mean, he's nimble, but he's not good with athletics.
Right.
He's not at all. And I know that I'm probably going to fail most of the rolls, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's like who's going to try to jump across this?
But how amazing is it when you make it?
I know, that's one of the great things, though. I think that's why I think that the rules can sometimes stifle the character's evolution.
Yes.
Because if you tell them no, they're never going to try. It's like I understand that if they ask to do something and within the mechanics of the world you've created, it doesn't make sense, then you can say, well, that doesn't really make sense to what's happening. Sometimes I will do that, but I will never tell them no. I will be like, no, you can't do that. Of course you can do it. You just can't do it right now in this particular situation. So I think, and again, I don't really look at the rules unless someone brings something up and they're like, well, I think this is this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, let's look it up and see, because it's the only way we're going to solve this issue is if we actually stop and look the rule up. But I really try to not let that happen during the combat play anyway. I mean, it's the combat play is when you're really like in it, you're thinking about your next move. You're like, okay, what's this? And then when someone comes along and says, oh, wait a minute. And then then we're all sitting there for 10, 15 minutes and you kind of get lost. All that excitement goes away.
Right. Exactly.
So I try to keep that to a minimum. Because I like and this is just me tooting my own horn, but I like my campaign and I like my combat sessions.
Oh, I do too.
And I mean, I really prepare those monsters. I really find you guys things to fight that I know would be fun and interesting, like purple worms. I mean, the purple worms, because they swallow you if you fail a dexterity or a dexterity save.
And that's a great example of completely having fun with that situation, because my character kept seeing one person spit out and swallowed and spit out, and I think it was like traumatic for her.
Yeah, because you were the only one that did not get swallowed.
Exactly. So I'm just like, oh my God. Ooh.
That was funny.
Yeah.
That was funny.
It was. And that's what made that session, I mean, besides, just the whole novelty of it all, but I mean, that made it really fun for me to play.
Oh, absolutely. It was a total great character moment for your character. I mean, yeah, it really was. I mean, even Osric, his character was having a grand old time.
Right.
He was getting swallowed every single time, and then he would attack it from the inside, and it would throw him up, and then the thing would attack him and swallow him again, and it was this cycle. It was fun. I mean, it really was. It was a lot of fun. And then you do have those characters that sometimes don't have as much fun as the other characters do, or the players. It's the players, not the characters. But,
yeah.
you can't let that get in the way. And I do as a DM, I don't do that. It's like I try to give everybody the opportunity that I can. And sometimes that means breaking the rules. And here we are back at rules. So I break the rules.
It all comes back to, at the end of the game, it's supposed to be fun.
Exactly.
As a DM, need to create that fun environment. And if that means sacrificing the letter of the law, keeping the structure of it, I think that's fine. I really do.
I do too. I think it's okay. I think that sometimes you have to break the rules, or just ignore them altogether in order to have fun and keep the sessions moving.
Yes.
And fun. Fun is truly, I think, the number one outcome, or at least it should be. Like, if you ask everyone after a session, it's like, did you guys have fun? Everyone should be like, yeah, I did. So fun is, I think, what it should be. And I think that rules tend to muffle that, or muzzle it rather.
They can. You gotta find a balance, just like every
yeah, I agree. So yeah, rules are there, and and I don't dismiss the rules, because a lot of people that are better at this game than I am put these rules together, and really thought long and hard on them, and even as the years have come by, they've been updated, and so I absolutely respect that. But I use it as more of as a suggestion than the letter of the law.
Right.
Because I just think that rules are great, but they get in the way sometimes. So cool. Do you have any further thoughts on rules in the game? And
no, I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you guys out there, when you're starting up as a DM, the very first thing you want to do is follow all the rules. And I get that. The very first time I DM'd with this group that I play with, I was probably eyeballs deep in the DM guide. And then the DM guide became overwhelming. And then I said, no, that's enough of that. So I'm just going to go in here and have fun. And that's what I did. And I think if you are starting out as a GM or DM, I think that, yes, you should probably look through the DM guide and the player's handbook just to get a grasp. But I don't think that it's something that you have to memorize or, stick it as a letter of the law. So
I think the players have a little bit of responsibility to research and understand the mechanics of their own character, of what their class is.
Mm-hmm.
Because the game is ever evolving, new characters, new classes. No DM can know all that. You can't. There's no way.
No.
So I think the players need to take a little responsibility of knowing what they're capable of.
Right. And I do that, and I'm very much about that too. It's like, you guys know what your characters can do. I don't know what your characters can do. I mean, I know what they can do now because we've been playing for so long, but as a DM, you're right, I don't have the time to know everybody's everything. So it's very much like,
can my character do this? And it's like, well, I don't know. Can you?
Exactly. That's how I am. It's like, oh, can I do it? I don't know. Can you? I mean, it's like, are you capable of that? I mean, I will ask questions. It's like, well, are you capable? Can you do that? And if they're like, well, yeah, according to the player's handbook, I can. I'm like, well, then there you have it. Let's do it, So I don't know the eternal workings of all the players in my campaign, or the characters in my campaign. I do know that, I know what I know based on watching you guys play those characters. Right. So I know like Jade Luna, I know what Jade Luna is capable of, but I don't know her specifics. I don't know, like, truly her specifics. I know what Osric, I know what he's capable of, but I don't know his specifics. Same way with Rohir and Arson. I know whatever all of the characters are capable of. I just don't know the specifics. And I don't think I need to know that. I mean, I think that it's my job to help you grow as characters by creating sessions that excuse me, that force you to collaborate and excuse me, and work as a team.
Yes.
So I think that's my job as a DM, and to carry the story and have the story arc and those sorts of things. But when it comes to individual characters, that's all you guys.
Right.
I mean, and it should be. I don't think any. You're right. I don't think any GM, DM is gonna. I don't think they should memorize the specifications of each class and race.
No.
I mean, that's a lot of information. Familiarize yourself, yes, but don't try to go into a session going, I know what every one of you can do because I memorized the player's handbook. It's like, well, okay, but it's going to change. I mean, it's going to evolve. So rules are good, but they're not the law of the land. At least that's the opinion of myself and others. And no shade being thrown to the folks who do like to follow the rules to the letter. I get that. You know, you should probably go and create a campaign where it's just you and other rule followers. Because if I was in a game where it was all rule followers, I'd probably want to kill myself. Or at least my character. I'd probably want to kill my character. So yeah.
Or kill that character.
Or kill, yeah, exactly. Or I'd want to turn on my party and be like, I want to kill all of you.
I've got attacks of opportunity already.
Yeah. So rules are, the rules are there because as a ground plan, as a DM, it's your job to interpret the rules and change them when it's necessary. It says so right in the DMG on page 4. If you don't believe me, go and read it yourself. But yeah, as a DM, you can keep the rules, but they don't have to be so strict that your players have no way to play. That everything they do is like against the rules, then you're probably not going to have a group for very long. They probably will be like, okay, I can't meet next week. Sorry. So yeah. All right. So thanks for joining us today. Thank you to my lovely co-host Jade Luna over here. This has been a DM Bits with Halfling Wizard, the rules. So stay groovy and keep playing out there.
Peace out.